The garage was filled with a tense energy as Jake and his crew prepared for their next move. They had successfully infiltrated the syndicate's headquarters and gathered crucial evidence, but they knew they were still in danger. "We need to get this evidence to Agent Johnson," Jake said, his voice steady. "But we can't let the syndicate know we're onto them." "Agreed," Mia said, her eyes scanning the data on her laptop. "I've encrypted the files and set up a secure transfer. But we need to move fast." Max nodded. "We'll need a plan to get out of here without being detected." As the crew gathered around to discuss their strategy, Jake's phone buzzed with a message from Tony. "Jake, it's Tony. The syndicate knows you have the evidence. They're coming for you. You need to get out now." Jake's heart raced as he relayed the message to his crew. "We've got to move. Now." The crew quickly packed up their equipment and prepared to leave. They knew they had to be fast and discreet to avoid detection. As they made their way to their cars, they heard the sound of engines roaring in the distance. The syndicate's men were closing in. "Let's go," Jake said, his voice filled with urgency. The crew sped off, their cars weaving through the city streets. They knew they had to stay ahead of their pursuers to reach the safe house and deliver the evidence. The chase was intense, with the syndicate's men hot on their heels. Jake and his crew used every trick in the book to evade capture, their cars darting through narrow alleys and taking sharp turns. As they approached the safe house, they saw a roadblock up ahead. The syndicate's men had anticipated their route and were waiting for them. "We need to find another way," Jake said, his mind racing. Mia quickly pulled up a map on her laptop. "There's a side street up ahead. It leads to an old warehouse. We can lose them there." Jake nodded and signaled to the crew. They took the side street, their cars speeding through the narrow passage. The syndicate's men followed, but the crew managed to stay one step ahead. As they reached the warehouse, Jake and his crew quickly parked their cars and slipped inside. The warehouse was dark and filled with old machinery, providing plenty of hiding spots. "Stay quiet," Jake whispered. "We need to wait for them to pass." The crew held their breath as they heard the sound of engines approaching. The syndicate's men searched the area, but they couldn't find Jake and his crew. After what felt like an eternity, the engines roared off into the distance. The crew breathed a sigh of relief. "We did it," Jake said, his voice filled with relief. "But we need to keep moving. Let's get to the safe house." They quickly made their way to the safe house, where Agent Johnson was waiting. She took the evidence and began analyzing it, her expression serious. "This is exactly what we needed," Agent Johnson said. "With this evidence, we can take down the syndicate and bring them to justice." "Good work, everyone," Jake said, his voice filled with pride. "But this isn't over yet. We need to stay vigilant and keep fighting." As the crew celebrated their victory, they knew the road ahead would be tough, but they were ready to face whatever challenges came their way. The safe house was a flurry of activity as Agent Johnson and her team analyzed the evidence Jake and his crew had gathered. The atmosphere was tense, but there was a sense of determination in the air. They were close to bringing down the syndicate, but they knew they had to be careful. Jake and his crew gathered around a table, reviewing the data on Mia's laptop. The files contained detailed plans of the syndicate's operations, including their next targets and key players. "This is it," Mia said, her eyes scanning the screen. "We've got everything we need to take them down." "Good work, everyone," Jake said, his voice filled with pride. "But we need to stay vigilant. The syndicate won't go down without a fight." As they continued to review the data, they discovered something shocking. The syndicate's ultimate plan was far more dangerous than they had imagined. They're planning to use the advanced car tech to create a fleet of autonomous vehicles, Max said, his voice filled with disbelief. They'll be able to control the entire city's transportation network. And they'll use it to expand their criminal empire, Alex added. They'll have complete control over the city's infrastructure. We need to stop them, Jake said, his eyes blazing with determination. But how? Agent Johnson stepped forward, her expression serious. We need to take down their headquarters and seize their main server. It's the only way to shut down their operations and prevent them from carrying out their plan. It's going to be dangerous, Mia said. But we don't have a choice. The crew quickly devised a plan to infiltrate the syndicate's headquarters and seize the main server. They knew it would be their most dangerous mission yet, but they were determined to succeed. As night fell, they set off, their cars roaring through the city streets. They arrived at the headquarters, the imposing structure looming in the darkness. The area was heavily guarded, with armed men patrolling the perimeter. Jake and his crew approached the entrance, their nerves on edge. They presented their credentials to the guards, who scrutinized them before allowing them inside. Remember, stay calm and stick to the plan, Jake whispered to his crew as they entered the building. Inside, the headquarters was a maze of corridors and rooms, filled with high-tech equipment and luxury cars. The crew split up, each member assigned to gather specific pieces of evidence and locate the main server. Jake and Mia made their way to the main office, where they hoped to find the server. As they approached the door, they heard voices inside. Everything is going according to plan, a deep voice said. The new cars will be ready for the next race, and will dominate the market. Jake and Mia exchanged a glance, their hearts pounding. They needed to get inside and gather the evidence without being detected. Mia quickly hacked the security system, disabling the cameras and unlocking the door. They slipped inside, their eyes scanning the room for any signs of the server. At the back of the room, they found a large, high-tech server, its lights blinking ominously. Jake quickly connected a device to the server, downloading the data while Mia kept watch. Hurry, Jake, Mia whispered. We don't have much time. Just as they finished, the door burst open, and a group of armed men stormed in. Jake and Mia were caught off guard, their hearts racing. Who are you? The leader demanded, his eyes narrowing. Thinking quickly, Jake replied, we're potential buyers. We heard about your cars and wanted to see them for ourselves. The leader's eyes flicked to the device in Jake's hand. And what's that? Jake's mind raced as he tried to come up with an explanation. It's a sample of our own tech. We thought you might be interested in a partnership. The leader studied them for a moment before nodding. Very well. But next time, make an appointment. Jake and Mia breathed a sigh of relief as they were escorted out of the office. They quickly regrouped with the rest of the crew, who had also gathered valuable evidence. As they made their way back to the safe house, Jake called Agent Johnson to update her. We've got the evidence, he said. But it was a close call. We need to move fast. Good work, Agent Johnson replied. I'll meet you at the safe house. We need to analyze the evidence and plan our next move. Back at the safe house, the crew reviewed the evidence with Agent Johnson. They had uncovered detailed plans of the syndicate's operations, including their next targets and key players. This is exactly what we needed, Agent Johnson said, her eyes shining with determination. With this evidence, we can take down the syndicate and bring them to justice. Good work, everyone, Jake said, his voice filled with pride. But this isn't over yet. We need to stay vigilant and keep fighting. As the crew celebrated their victory, they knew the road ahead would be tough, but they were ready to face whatever challenges came their way. The safe house was buzzing with anticipation as Jake and his crew prepared for the final showdown. They had gathered all the evidence they needed to take down the syndicate, but they knew the battle wasn't over yet. "We need to shut down their operations for good," Agent Johnson said, her voice steady. "The syndicate is planning a major race to showcase their new fleet of autonomous vehicles. If they succeed, they'll have complete control over the city's transportation network." "We can't let that happen," Jake said, his eyes blazing with determination. "We'll need to win this race and expose their plans to the world." The crew quickly devised a plan to infiltrate the race and gather the final pieces of evidence. They knew it would be their most dangerous mission yet, but they were determined to succeed. As night fell, they set off, their cars roaring through the city streets. They arrived at the race location, a sprawling industrial complex filled with high-tech vehicles and spectators. Jake and his crew approached the starting line, their nerves on edge. They presented their credentials to the race officials, who scrutinized them before allowing them to enter. "Remember, stay calm and stick to the plan," Jake whispered to his crew as they lined up their cars. The signal was given, and the racers shot off, tires screeching against the asphalt. The race was intense, with cars weaving in and out of traffic, narrowly avoiding collisions. Jake and Leo were neck and neck, their rivalry pushing them to the limit. As they rounded a corner, Jake saw his opportunity. He signaled to Mia, who was monitoring the race from a nearby rooftop. She activated a series of hacks, disrupting the syndicate's autonomous vehicles and giving Jake the edge he needed. The crowd roared as Jake took the lead, his car speeding towards the finish line. But Leo wasn't giving up easily. He pushed his car to the limit, determined to win at any cost. "You think you can beat me, Turbo?" Leo sneered, his voice crackling over the radio. "I'm not just racing for myself," Jake replied, his voice steady. "I'm racing for my crew, and for the city." The final stretch was a blur of speed and adrenaline. Jake and Leo were side by side, their cars inches apart. But Jake's skill and determination gave him the edge he needed. As Jake crossed the finish line, the crowd erupted in cheers. He had won the race, but more importantly, he had exposed the syndicate's plans to the world. Back at the safe house, Agent Johnson and her team quickly moved in, seizing the syndicate's headquarters and arresting their key players. The evidence Jake and his crew had gathered was instrumental in bringing down the entire operation. "We did it," Agent Johnson said, her voice filled with pride. "The syndicate is finished." Jake and his crew celebrated their victory, their bond stronger than ever. They had faced incredible odds and come out on top, but they knew the road ahead would still be challenging. As they stood together, watching the sunrise, Jake felt a sense of hope and determination. They had won the battle, but the fight for justice was far from over. "We've come a long way," Jake said, his voice filled with pride. "And we've faced a lot of challenges. But we've always come out stronger. We'll get through this too." The crew nodded in agreement, their hearts filled with hope and determination. They knew the road ahead would be tough, but they were ready to face whatever challenges came their way.